We call it Earth, but a better name might be water. After all, 3/5 of its surface is really water, and it's deep water too. Push the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest, beneath the deepest part of the sea, and fish can still swim unruffled over it. The peak is 8,000 meters from the ocean bed, but it's still 3,000 meters from the surface. For centuries, we've wondered what it's like down there. The unexplored waters have challenged and frightened our fertile imaginations ever since we can remember. But for most of that history, the only way to go underwater is in our imaginations. One early 17th century dreamer suggests this kind of a ship to get around underwater. Off the stern is a nice practical net for deep sea fishing. Off the bow is a sportier fish catcher. Our dreamer firmly insists that there must be freshwater springs on the floor of the sea. These conveniently provide plenty of drinking water for the crew and their families. It's an old dream, to return to the beginnings of all life, to retire beneath the waters, undisturbed by the madness above. But there's another dream, too, a more practical dream. A certain Mr. Van Drebbel promises that his submarine will be able to sink 100 ships a day. Fortunately, however, his leather-covered rowboat doesn't make a very good submarine, and he can only sink ships on paper. But within about 100 years, we're getting more successful. This egg is, in fact, an early submarine. Its inventor, the American David Bushnell, uses hand-operated propellers to move it forward and upward. This is the rudder, and this is the screw. And here's the mine. This is the chamber for water ballast. All submarines are based on the same principle. Well, it's the time of the American Revolution, and Mr. Bushnell is moved to do his part. One dark night, he undertakes the first submarine attack against the hated British ships. In his historic excitement, though, he goes out with the tide, far past his mark. With typical forefather resolve, he returns to battle, and in no time is under the despised British flagship, where he attacks with a large screw. The hull, however, is covered with copper plates. "25 years later, we're still trying. Robert Fulton's submarine is already spindle-shaped, but still uses a muscle-powered propeller. It can remain underwater for 4 hours before it surfaces to become a sailboat. Finally, Fulton loses interest in the underwater and uses his head for moving boats on the surface. The years go by, and other brightheads are still fascinated by the idea of submarines. This one belongs to a Mr. Bauer. His submarine is also driven by muscle power. To be exact, by 2 assistants. One day, at a depth of about 18 meters, water starts pouring in. The clever Mr. Bauer saves the day by doing nothing. He just waits till the air pressure equals the water pressure. Then he opens the hatch and shoots up in a giant air bubble. He's much luckier than Ladner Phillip, the daring shoemaker, who quits his business to descend into Lake Erie, but, like scores before him, doesn't come back up. Until now, all the inventors have relied on muscle power to move their submarines. But by the 1860s, steam engines appear on submarines. Electric motors, even compressed air motors, which the Frenchmen Bourgeois and Brune install on their surprisingly modern-looking vessel. Unfortunately, stability is a problem. By the end of the 60s, the world is introduced to the first submarine to overcome all the problems with ease. Unfortunately, the giant Nautilus exists only in the mind of the French writer, Jules Verne. But what an imagination! With a huge electromotor, the submarine is a self-sufficient world with every convenience. It's the old dream of living in the sea. The second half of the 19th century is full of dreamers and inventors of all kinds of things. We're beginning to explore the sky. Surely we can explore the sea. All that's needed is a first-rate inventor. If we can make workable airships, we ought to be able to make reliable submarines. The idea of a workable submarine catches the world's fancy. It seems that everyone has an idea. The results of their submarine efforts are imaginative. A Frenchman, Monsieur Goubet, comes up with the first family sub. He floods the magazines and newspapers with ads about the benefits of his brand of submarine.
Be the first in your town to have your own leisure sub. While away the hours in a water paradise. Invite your friends aboard. There's always plenty of room. Yes, friends, hour after hour of underwater pleasure. And what better place to enjoy truly gourmet cooking? And in the evening, thrill to the cozy crew quarters, where everything you need is just an arm's length away. And Cafe au Sardine? Why not? Just because you're at sea doesn't mean you can't enjoy the finer things in life. So come on in. You always have a friend at Goubet's Grand Marine Undersea Emporium.
Oddly enough, Mr. Goubet's invention doesn't catch on with the public. Despite the efforts of amateur inventors, we do continue to make progress, and by the beginning of the 20th century, we have several practical submarines. At last, we can begin to enjoy the underwater world. But more important things first. Many governments see more immediate, practical uses for the sub. A number of designs emerge, all of them having one thing in common: the torpedo. the next 30 years, most of the advances in the design of submarines are used for warfare. In spite of the wars, the dream of underwater exploration is not forgotten. The old designs are still remembered. A quiet observatory hanging from a boat on the surface. Work continues in exploring under the water. A deep-water submarine, a bathysphere, is invented. A sturdy steel ball strong enough to withstand immense pressures with room enough for just one man. Its inventor, the Italian, Del Pozzo. Down he plunges, deeper and deeper, into a world no one before him has ever seen. In the inky, hostile blackness, he sees life. Bizarre, self-illuminated fish thriving under water pressures that would kill any other living thing. Nevertheless, deep water exploration remains fraught with danger, for every bathysphere must hang from one thin lifeline. Deep sea studies have to look for new possibilities. The year 1931, the place up in the air. A balloon with a steel chamber, hermetically sealed, rises to a height of 13 kilometers. Although the Swiss physicist Auguste Piccard just manages to break the record for height, he is already considering trying for the record for depth. The vessel he invents is called a bathyscaphe, and it really is very much like his air vessel. In both cases, the crew sits in an airtight steel chamber, and in both cases, ascent and descent are regulated by ballast. In 1953, Piccard reaches a record depth of over 3,000 meters. A few years later, he breaks his own record. Piccard dies in 1962, but his son continues his research. After careful preparation, the young Piccard decides to take a dangerous step. He aims to reach the bottom of the Mariana Trench, more than 10,000 meters beneath the sea. It's a kind of reverse Mount Everest. He successfully descends into a world of eternal darkness. And yet, even here at the bottom of the sea, he finds life. Today, in the last quarter of the 20th century, we have begun the conquest of the heavens and of the seas. Soon we may not only colonize outer space, but inner space as well. Already we have nuclear submarines, which can stay underwater for months at a time. We have begun deep-sea mining, and we are experimenting with ocean farming. Someday soon we'll have self-sufficient cities under the sea. Who knows? Perhaps your grandchildren will live there.